Okay, hello everybody. So very nice to be here with you. I'm very sorry I do not speak Turkish. I did visit your country many years ago. It must have been in 1973. And we traveled across the country. And so I really enjoyed being there. I haven't been back since, so I imagine things have really changed since then. And it's very nice to have the opportunity to talk to you today. So I think we're talking about self-acceptance, right? And yeah, that is an interesting and challenging thing to do. What I want to talk about first is what blocks our self-acceptance. And then after that, kind of go into how we can overcome those blocks and really accept ourselves. So when I thought about it, and I'm sure, you know, if we were together in a room, you would also have ideas about what blocks your self-acceptance. But when I think about it, a lot of it comes from what I've learned from society about how I'm supposed to be. You know, our society, you know, socializes us, and it tells us that if we are a certain kind of person, we should have these kind of qualities and these kind of traits. And so we get this model from the society. We also get a model of what we're supposed to be from our families. Yeah? And that depends a lot on how our families were brought up. Yeah? Often our parents want us to have everything they didn't have. They want us to be everything they weren't able to be, because in their minds, they think this is what happiness is. And so they tell us from the time we're very little that we should have certain interests and go to certain schools and have a certain kind of job or career and get married at a certain age and all these kinds of things that, you know, they want for us that they think will make us happy. We're not quite sure ourselves if those will make us happy or not, but never mind. Our parents think they will. So from that, we develop different ideas of who we should be, what we should do, what we should have. And then another way that we develop all these expectations of ourselves, because it's these expectations that I think are the real big hindrance for us. Another way is we compete with other people. And so, you know, starting, well, when we're kids, if we have siblings, sometimes there's competition with our siblings for our parents' attention or our parents' praise. When we go to school, sometimes there's competition with other kids. You know, then when you start to work, there's competition with colleagues. And so all of this makes us, you know, we have certain ideals of what we think we should be so that we can be better than these other people, so that we can get the praise, so that we can get the appreciation. Yeah. So what I'm getting at is, you know, from our whole lives, we're being conditioned by outside things, our society, our family, our friends and our colleagues, you know, to think we should be in a certain way, and we should do certain things, and we should have certain things. And we establish this incredible image of ourselves as, you know, what we should be, okay? And I really emphasize the should here, because shoulds run our life, but they don't really mean much, because what we should be and do and have is often totally unrelated to what we want, what we feel good about, what our own aspirations for ourselves are. Okay, is this making some sense to you? Yeah. I can give you an example. Okay, so so my parents were the children of immigrants into America, and my parents grew up during the Depression, and so they lived in poverty, and they were trying to get adjusted to American society. And for them, success meant having an education and a good job and making a lot of money. Yeah. And so I was very much emphasized as I was growing up that I should be a doctor. Okay. And so I grew up with this bar of, oh, I should be a doctor. So that means I have to get into these kind of schools. I have to do this. I have to do that. Yeah. And so this kind of ran my life for quite a while as I tried to fulfill those expectations. Because also it wasn't just my parents' expectations, but I had bought into those expectations. And so I thought, oh, this is what I should be and do and have. And yet it wasn't really, as I grew up, for a while, yes, I did want to be a doctor. But then after a while, that wasn't what the career I wanted to have. Yeah. And although I was brought up that I should have children, I wasn't so sure I wanted to have children. Okay. So this is just an example, so you can get the idea of the expectations that we learned from others and that then we adopted for ourselves. And then that puts us in positions of having to compete with other people, for example, in school or in the workplace, to fulfill those expectations. Okay, and when we sit down and really think about our life, that may not even be what we want. That may not be what makes us happy. It may not correspond to our own talents. Yeah. My dad wanted to be a doctor. The circumstances weren't right for him to be a doctor. That's why they wanted me to be the doctor. Okay. So, yeah. But after a while, when I became an adult, it was like, well, actually, I have more of a spiritual interest. And, I don't want to really be a doctor. I want to fulfill my spiritual interest. So that caused some friction, because there were these expectations of me. Yeah. And so often when we don't meet the expectations that other people have of us, or we don't meet our own expectations, then, there's this lack of self-acceptance. And what we do then is we criticize ourselves. Okay, are you familiar with self-criticism? We think we should be a certain way, and we aren't that way. Yeah. especially when you grow up and oh, what does it mean to be a woman? What does it mean to be a man? And, and you're trying to pick up what all these things mean from your society and from the people that you're trying to attract. And then you go, oh, well, I don't know if I really am that. Yeah. Because also, I'm not sure in your culture, but we have here a lot of fairy tales. Yeah. Little children's stories where you have the beautiful princess who is swept off her feet by the handsome prince, and they go through some difficulties, but finally they get married and they live happily ever after. Yeah, do you have those children's stories in Turkish at all? Yeah, you do? Okay. So, we grow up thinking, oh, well, in the story, the princess was beautiful. So that means I have to be beautiful. Yeah. And then we look in the mirror and wait a minute, I don't look like the princess looks. Yeah. My hair is a different color. My skin doesn't look like the princess's skin. I have a big nose, and, the princess is like, she's so thin and I'm not thin. And, I should look like this princess. What is wrong with me? Nobody's ever going to be attracted. I'm never going to get married. Oh, and then of course we criticize ourselves. What's wrong with me? Maybe if I go to the gym and I do some exercises, then my body will look like the princess's body, and I go to the beauty shop and I dye my hair a different color, and then maybe I will look like the princess. Okay. So these thoughts are not so obvious as I'm speaking them now, but they're in the back of our mind as we compare ourselves to what we think we should look like. Yeah. And the trick is, then when we get older, we look at the models in the magazines, and we don't look like them either. Yeah. So, oh dear, what's wrong with me? Something's wrong with me. I've got to change myself. I need to look like them. And then, of course, as we get older, we get wrinkles, we get gray hair, we get bumps on our skin, and then what's wrong with me? And there's no self-acceptance of the natural aging process that we all experience, because we look at the people in the magazines and compare ourselves to them. And this is all a bunch of rubbish, actually, because the models in the magazines don't even look like the pictures of them, because the pictures have all been airbrushed. The photography has been airbrushed so that the models look even thinner than they are, so their complexion is, totally beautiful. They don't even look like the pictures. Okay. But still, what's going on psychologically in us is we're comparing ourselves to those ideals. And, we're losing out. That's not who we are. Okay. So that's what we're brought up with. What it brings is a lot of lack of self-confidence. And together with that lack of self-confidence is a lack of accepting ourselves. You know, there's always this feeling of I should be different than I am. Okay. But that really is, that thinking like that is a big trap. Yeah. Because when you think about it, who actually says we should look like them? Why can't we look the way we look? Why can't we be happy with the way we look? Why can't we be happy with the things that we're interested in? And why can't we be happy with our own level of income? Yeah. Why is there this constant dissatisfaction? Yeah, where we think, you know, something's wrong and I've got to be different and I've got to change. And, you know, okay. So I think a better way to look at this, to solve this whole difficulty that we have, is just to be able to look at who we are right now. Yeah. And be able to say to ourselves, that's okay. Yeah. Now, I may not be what my expectation of myself is, but maybe I need to remove that expectation. Maybe the expectation is not correct. Yeah. And to instead look, excuse me, to instead develop an ability to evaluate ourselves and see ourselves in a very clear way without comparing ourselves to anybody else or comparing ourselves to the image of what society thinks we should be or our family thinks we should be. Okay. But just looking at our own good qualities, we see our faults too. Yeah. And to be able to say, okay, that's okay. Yeah. So I may not look like the models. That's okay. Why isn't it okay? Why not be okay? Yeah. We were born in a certain way. We grew up, you know, in a certain way. Our bodies look like they look. That's fantastic. Okay. Leave it like it is. We don't have to do all sorts of things to try and make ourselves look different than we actually are. Okay. Where we, the way we look is good enough. And society or our family or whatever may have said, wanted us to have certain kind of talents and abilities, but lots of times those are not the things that interest us or that even we're good at. Yeah. And so to become friends with ourselves and be able to see, you know, this is what I'm interested in. And that's fine. Yeah. Why is it fine? Because we all come into this life differently. Yeah. We all grow up different people. We have different personalities. We shouldn't expect ourselves to all look alike and be alike. And whatever talents and abilities we have, they're the things that we can use to make a contribution to the world. Okay, so we all have our own unique talents and abilities. And the idea is to get in touch with what those are and then emphasize them and use them to contribute to society, to contribute to the welfare and happiness of the people around us. So we may have an expectation of ourselves to, to go into IT and to do some kind of technological something. But maybe that's not really what we're so good at. Maybe actually we like dancing and we would much rather be a dancer. Yeah, and be a dancer. It's okay. Yeah. I mean, dancing can bring joy. You go into the arts contribute a lot to society. So make your contribution that way. You don't have to make your contribution through sitting behind a computer and writing code all day. That's not the only way to live. Okay, so to really, what I said before, make friends with ourselves, get to know ourselves. Yeah, what am I really interested in? What are the things that I'm good with? Yeah, what are the things that interest me, where I can make a contribution, so that I feel that my own life is useful. So I'm not living by somebody else's script of what they think I should be, but I'm living according to the circumstances and conditions of what I am and what I can do. Okay, is this making some sense to you? Yeah, because I think when we get to know ourselves and we see what our own unique talents and specialities are, and we foster those and give those to society, then we feel a lot happier. The contribution we make is really something that is coming from our heart. Yeah, it's coming from, we have a passion about doing something. We have, an interest in doing something. We want to do something. So then if whatever we do because it's something we're interested and passionate about, then it's going to turn out well, rather than if we try and be what somebody else wants us to be. Okay. So, to sit and really think, what am I good at? What are my talents? And okay, there are some things where other people, some areas where other people are more talented than me. Yeah. In fact, there's a lot of areas where people are more talented than me. And that's good. I'm glad that there are other people who are better than I am, because if I were the best in this world would have a lot of problems. Okay, think about it. For example, okay, I took science in high school and learned about electricity, but I understood a little bit. Yeah, it was interesting. But I didn't, when I went to university, I didn't study about electricity. So I forgot what I learned in high school, which was anyway very elementary. So right now, the only thing I know about electricity is basically how to turn a light switch on and off and how to change a light bulb. That is the extent of my knowledge about electricity. Okay. So actually, I am so glad there are people who are better than me and have more knowledge about electricity, because if I were the best one with all the knowledge about electricity, we would live like the cavemen and the cave women, with dark houses, no electricity, no computers. We wouldn't be able to talk to each other on Zoom. Yeah, you wouldn't even have a water kettle, let alone a toaster or an oven to heat something without electricity. So I'm really glad there are people that are better than me. Okay. So, another thing is to learn to rejoice at the fact that other people are better than us in some areas, because that is what contributes. Everybody contributes their own talent to make the world a good place. Yeah. So, like I said, if I were the best about electricity, forget it. Okay. Similar with plumbing. Okay. I know how to turn on the water tap. I know how to flush the toilet. I know how to plunge the toilet, and also the sink if it gets stuck. Beyond that, my knowledge of electricity, of plumbing is zero. Okay. I cannot fix any of the plumbing when it breaks. Okay. This is a big disadvantage. Yeah. It would be nice to be able to fix the plumbing when it breaks. Similarly, it would be nice to fix the electricity in the house when it doesn't function properly. But these are not my talents. They are not my abilities. Yeah. There's so many people who are more talented than I am in these areas. Thank goodness for plumbers. I rejoice there are plumbers, because if I were the best in plumbing, we would all have outhouses right now. There would be no plumbing in our houses. Okay. Or like your kitty, we would all have our own little sandboxes. Okay. So it's really good that there are people who are better than us. Yeah. So if we look that way, then there's much more self-acceptance. Yeah. Much less comparison. But then in the area where we are passionate, yeah, where we do have some talent, then there's also the tendency to compare ourselves to other people and to think, I am just not good enough. What's wrong with me? Okay. So again, I'm giving you personal examples from my life. My life is, of course, different than your life. But the reason I'm doing this is because then you can see how to apply what I'm talking about in your own life, okay? Just by me giving an example, okay? So my field of expertise, so to speak, you might say is Buddhism. And I learned it through the Tibetan. Yeah, I had Tibetan teachers. Now, it would be very nice to speak Tibetan. Yeah, if you're going to become an expert in Tibetan Buddhism, or just even know anything about it, well, no, to really become an expert, to be able to read the original texts that were written many, many centuries ago, it would be good to know Tibetan language. Okay. So my teachers also wanted me to learn Tibetan language. So I tried. Yeah. And when I lived in India, I had somebody who taught me. But then sometimes I had visa problems. I had to leave the country, or my teacher went away, or there were so many difficulties. In any case, I never learned Tibetan. I learned a few technical terms here and there, but I don't know how to speak. And you give me a written text, and I can't tell you what it means. Okay. Now, when I'm with my peers, yeah, who are also studying Tibetan Buddhism. Oh, this one's so good. She's fluent in Tibetan and she can speak colloquial Tibetan perfectly. Great accent. I can't even hear the difference between some of the letters, but she can hear the difference. She can speak the difference. It's wonderful. And this friend over here, she knows classical Tibetan, which is really different than colloquial Tibetan. Oh, I so much wish I knew that. What's wrong with me? I'm not so good. Why couldn't I learn it? All these other people, now even people who are younger than me, they're better in Tibetan language. I never learned it. Oh, I'm a failure. Okay. Yeah. So the field you're good in, you start comparing yourself. And of course, whenever we compare ourselves to others, guaranteed we come out less. Okay. So for a long time, I just thought, I just really messed up, and my teachers are disappointed in me, and I can't read the text, and I can't do this, and what's kind of on and on and on. Made lots of, felt quite miserable. And then what I realized is, in one way, it was good I didn't learn Tibetan language, because when I learned it, I had to really learn the Dharma. When I learned Buddhism, I had to really think about what each term meant, what the English translation for each word actually meant, what it actually referred to. Yeah. And this was actually good, because if I knew Tibetan, I would just use the Tibetan word without really thinking deeply about what that word actually meant. But because I had to use the English word, and very often English words mean different than the Tibetan term that they're the translation for. So because of that, I had to really think about what do certain words mean. And after some years, I realized that was actually something good. Yeah. And that if I had learned Tibetan language, I would not have thought so much deeply about the meaning of different words. In fact, knowing me, I might have become quite arrogant. Oh, look at me. I know Tibetan. Aren't I wonderful? And I would have become quite arrogant. Yeah, which is the opposite of the kind of person I want to be. I don't want to be an arrogant person. Okay, so I began to see that actually what I thought was a disadvantage actually was an advantage for me personally. Yeah, and that it made me think more deeply, and it prevented me from becoming very prideful and arrogant. Yeah. And so when I thought about it that way, there was just so much more self-acceptance. And okay, that was a problem for me. That was a hindrance, but this is something good I learned out of it. And also, it kept me very humble. Yeah. And it made me really start to appreciate the people that I work with, so that instead of competing with them, because now I've given up trying to learn Tibetan, yeah, instead of competing with them or being jealous of them because they know the language and I don't, I just practice rejoicing in their abilities to translate. I rejoice that they can read the text themselves, and and that's fine, and I'm happy for them. And that is a much nicer feeling than before, when I didn't accept myself and I was jealous of them. Okay, communicating, you understand what I mean? Yeah, because when we compare ourselves with others and we think they're better than us, yeah, then we don't accept ourselves, we feel bad about ourselves, and we feel jealous of the other people. And I don't know about you, but for me, jealousy is an extremely uncomfortable emotion. Yeah, when I am jealous, I am miserable. I am so unhappy. Whereas when I can rejoice at the good qualities of somebody else, then my own mind is much more peaceful. Yeah, much more satisfied. And I realized, okay, they, in this case, they can contribute their knowledge of Tibetan, and I'll contribute what I'm able to give by thinking more deeply about the translation terms. Yeah. So we're both aiming for the same long-term purpose, but we're doing it in different ways, and that's completely okay. And what I have to give is valuable. Okay. So it alleviates all this jealousy of comparing myself to others, competing with others, and always saying, I'm not good enough. Yeah, because it's so important that we really accept ourselves. I mean, we are what we are. Okay, now somebody will probably say, well, what happens if I made a huge mistake in my life and I did something really terrible, something really non-virtuous? I harmed some other living being. There's some things, I mean, we all have things in our life that we regret doing, right? Yeah, where our mind got out of control, we said something mean to somebody else, or we hit somebody, or we talk bad about somebody behind their back. We all have these kinds of things. So what does self-acceptance mean in that context? Yeah. Does that just mean, oh, yeah, I accept that I lied to people and I deceived them, but it's okay? No. Yeah. What it means is we identify what our mistaken action was. Yeah. We know, and we want to act different. We know we can act differently in the future, and we want to act differently in the future. So we regret our negative action, but without criticizing ourselves for doing it. Okay. So here's what the thing to be very clear about. The person who does an action and the action that person does are two different things. Okay. So the action may be horrible. I lied or deceived or stole or physically harmed somebody. Yeah. Or ruin their reputation by gossip. The action may be horrible, but that doesn't mean that the person who did that action is an evil person or a bad person. Okay. We have to differentiate the action and the person who did the action, because we are not the worst action we ever did in our life. Okay. We have done many, many things in our life. So what does it mean to accept ourselves when we look at our mistaken actions, our harmful actions? It means that we say, yes, I did that. When I look at my motivation, I see that I had a very selfish motivation. I did that action because I was only thinking of my own benefit. And because of that, I did harmful things that harmed other people. And I regret that. Okay. I accept that I did it. I accept that I had a horrible motivation. But I also know that that is not who I am as a person. Okay. Why? Because we all have incredible potential. Okay. When we look at ourselves from as spiritual beings, we all have the potential to improve. We have the potential to become incredibly loving and kind beings. We have the potential to be free of our anger. Wouldn't that be nice? We have potential to be free of jealousy and clinging. Yeah, because these mental afflictions, these disturbing emotions are not who we are. They're just aspects of the mind, but they aren't who we are. So we can say, okay, I have those now, but I can eliminate them. And so through whatever spiritual tradition you follow, yeah, then you will find methods to really help you overcome those aspects of yourself that you want to change, where you know that you can be different, where you know that the motivations you had that made you do actions that you don't like, and you regret, that you can change those, that you can shape yourself in a different way. Okay. So for example, if you're somebody who tends to have a very bad temper, yeah, and you get angry like this, yeah. Anybody here have a bad temper? And you get angry very quickly. Oh, explosion, yeah. Oh, some explosive people, okay. Yeah. How about people who get very angry and you withdraw and you don't talk to anybody? You just, yeah, you give them the cold shoulder. Who does that? Okay. How many of them, sometimes you explode and sometimes you withdraw? Yeah, we do both, depending on the circumstances. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. So we might see, oh, when I act like that, yeah, I'm not communicating very well with somebody. And I'm angry and I don't communicate. And instead, I blame them for everything. I yell, I scream, or I go back into another room, slam the door. I become like an ice cube. I don't talk to anybody. I'm so mad. Yeah. And so your whole family, the whole atmosphere in the family is like, it's really hot because you exploded, or it's really cold because you're not talking to anybody. Okay, anybody have that? Yeah. So, yeah. And then we look and we say, oh, I really messed up. I'm with my family. These are the people I love. Why am I acting like this with them? Yeah, I really love them. I want to be able to communicate better without being so irritable, without blaming other people when I'm unhappy, Okay, so then you have regret for your own behavior. Regret is different than guilt. You don't feel guilty. Okay? You regret it. What's the difference between guilt and regret? Regret just means I made a mistake. Guilt means, oh, how terrible I am. I did this. This person will never forgive me. I will never forgive me. How could I have done this? I'm the worst person alive. All this kind of self-blame, okay? The guilt is actually a disturbing emotion. It's not a realistic way of looking at ourselves. We made a mistake. That does not make us the worst person in the world. Yeah, we made a mistake. It doesn't mean that we're going to make 10 million mistakes in the future. Yeah, we can purify our mistaken action. We can work to change ourselves. Yeah, so for example, to calm our anger so we don't get so upset, we can actually work to do that, which doesn't mean stuffing our anger down. It means learning how to look at the situation in a different way so that we don't get angry in the first place. Okay, so when we know that we can change, we can regret our mistaken actions without blaming ourselves, without making up some false story that we're the worst person in the world, because we aren't the worst person in the world. We have talents, we have abilities, we do have a kind heart. Sometimes we get mad, but in the base, we have a kind heart. So we can increase our kind heart and decrease our anger. Okay, so when it says that we accept ourselves, we are accepting what we are right now, and at the same time, we know we can change in the future. Okay, so accepting that I have a bad temper doesn't mean that I'm accepting that for the whole rest of my life, I'm going to have a bad temper. It just means what I did in the past, I had a bad temper. That's what made me do that. I regret it, but I can learn how to calm myself and how to look at a situation differently so I don't get angry in the first place. So that in the future, I am a much calmer person. I am not as irritable and angry. Okay, so I can accept myself for what I did now and my habits now, and at the same time know that I can change and go about familiarizing myself with the different things that I need to learn so that I can change and become more the person that I want to be. Okay. So one of the books that I often use for anger, it was written by an 8th century Indian sage. His name was Shantideva. And the book is called Engaging in the Bodhisattva's Deeds. And there's one chapter in it about developing fortitude and patience, you know, to learn to deal with suffering without getting angry, to deal with criticism without exploding. Yeah. So I go back to that chapter, I read it, I sit and contemplate it. Yeah, I take out situations that happened in the past and I try thinking in a different way according to how Shantideva explained how to think. And you do this over a period of time, and then you see yourself change. Yeah. So it takes time, but we can change. And it's simply a process of rehabituating ourselves with different, more constructive emotions and more constructive ways of expressing our emotions. Okay. So that's, the self-acceptance, what it does is it prevents us from blaming ourselves and feeling guilty and going, oh, I'm such a horrible person, because all that way of talking to ourselves about how we're not good enough, that all of that, makes us feel bad about ourselves. And that creates a big obstacle to being happy, and it creates a big obstacle to learning and practicing the different methods to cultivate our good qualities. Okay, so guilt is something we should banish, and self-acceptance means, yes, I accept I have a temper at this time, but I know I can change it, and I'm going to go about changing it. Okay? So self-acceptance gives us a sense of how we can change and become the kind of person we want to be. Because I think most of us, if not all of us, would like to be kind and compassionate and wise people. True? Yeah. Would you like to have a kind heart? Yeah. Would you like to be more loving? Would you like to be more compassionate? Would you like to be more generous and kinder? Yeah. Would you like to be wiser and be able to think more clearly and make wise decisions? Yeah, I think we would all like to become like that. Yeah. So, we have those kind of aspirations for ourselves. And now we can, begin developing those qualities. And we do it quite conscientiously, to develop those qualities. And because we know there are specific methods on how to develop them. Okay, and so that gives us a sense of confidence, that yes, I have good qualities and I can contribute something beneficial to the people who are around me in my life, and I can contribute something beneficial to society as well. Yeah, and when we have that in our hearts, in our minds, then our life goes so much better, doesn't it? Okay.
Thank you so much for your generosity, for your
Thank
time,
you.
sharing your wisdom with us. This was the first time we host you in Turkey, and I'm hoping that it won't be the last. And
Okay.
I thank you on behalf of everyone here. I'm so excited and so happy. Thank you for sharing all your wisdom with us.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for listening so well and for thinking deeply. I could sense when I was speaking that you were all listening and paying attention and thinking about it. So thank you all for that too.
Thank you so much. Hope we can host you one more time or many more
Sure. Yeah,
times.
I'm happy to do that.
Thank you so much, Venerable Children.
Okay. Thank you all. Thank you, Merv, and thank you, the translators, and thank you, the tech people.